Making the decision to move to another country is not something to be taken lightly, and I'm sure anyone who's considering it has already lined up a long list of pros and cons, or a long list of questions, a long list of things to figure out. Today I'm going to give you 20 questions to help you decide if you should move to the Dominican Republic, if it would be the right decision for you. Some of these questions are more logistical things, others have to do with health, others have to do with the cultural differences, and I made these questions keeping in mind people like myself, people from the US, maybe from Canada, where there will be that cultural clash. If you're a Dominican who has immigrated abroad and you're looking to come back and you're trying to decide if that's the right move for you, some of these questions probably won't be as relevant. This is not an exhaustive list, so I'd love if you have any additional questions to add after watching it. Add those below. Without further ado, let's just jump right into the questions. First category is logistical questions. Number 1, have you ever been to the Dominican Republic? If so, have you looked into cities? Have you looked into neighborhoods where you might want to live? Also, have you interacted with locals outside of a tourist setting? Like if you're just on the resort and you are interacting with the people who work there, that's one kind of interaction, but have you ever interacted with people in the culture at large? Those are all things to consider, because if you've never been here, I would always recommend at least visiting before you decide you want to move there. Of course, you can always just jump right in. That's what I did when I moved to Honduras, found a job online, and I moved there. So I'm not saying it's absolutely necessary, but it is something that if you're considering it to be a long-term move, you might want to do beforehand. Number 2, do you know anyone in the Dominican Republic? This is definitely not a necessity. You can move somewhere without knowing anybody at all, but it is helpful. It is helpful to at least start with one person. They can introduce you to more people and you can build a community, you can build your family here, or at least have a friend group. I know a lot of people in our day and age are suffering from loneliness. The last thing I want to see happen to someone is that they move here and they just feel so lonely, because it really doesn't have to be that way. And if you at least know one person, that helps you get your foot in the door. Number 3, do you speak Spanish? Now, maybe you can get by just fine without speaking Spanish. I know people do it, but it would be good, I think, to at least brush up on a little bit of that high school Spanish. Get out the Duolingo, maybe work on it a little bit if you don't know any at all. But if you do have a solid foundation, that can help you. Although, granted, Dominican Spanish can be very different, very unique at times. So it might not help you a whole lot just to know the basics, but eventually you'll get the hang of it. Number 4 is a 2-part question, and the question is, are you willing to either, number 1, begin the resident process while you're still in the US? It requires going to the embassy. I'm not really sure what else it entails, but you have to start it in the US. I do know that. Or if you're not willing to do that, are you willing to pay the overstay fee every time you leave? A lot of people do that. If you stay here for 6 months at a time to 8 months or 9 months, it does add up. It can be like at least $70 when you leave at the airport. So are you willing to pay that, or are you willing to start the process for becoming a resident? Have you looked into the requirements? That's something to consider. Which route are you going to take? Number 5, and this is sort of beginning the health-related questions, but also it's kind of a logistical question. Can you handle the heat? It's pretty hot here, especially in midday, well, I would say the summer, but summer is like at least half the year. It's always summer weather for me here, coming from Pennsylvania. And although it does get hot in Pennsylvania during the summers, having the other seasons makes it more bearable, but it's just pretty much always hot here, depending on where you live. Of course, if you live in Constanza or Jarabacoa, it'll be colder, but yeah, can you handle the heat? Number 6 is, do you have a plan for figuring out how you're going to continue your prescription medications if you take them, or how you're going to continue treatment for maybe an ongoing medical diagnosis that you may have? That's something that's important, Health is important. If you have that figured out, if you have a plan, how to find a doctor, if you have a recommendation, then that's great. But if you haven't thought about that, if you're taking a prescription medication, you should probably figure out or consider how you're going to transfer that to here and how it'll work, finding a new doctor. Number 7, do you have any dietary restrictions? For example, I know several people who are gluten-free, and personally, I don't really know how easy that would be to be gluten-free here. Obviously, I'm sure there are people who need to have that diet here, but in the US, in the grocery store, there's like a whole section for gluten-free things. There's often side-by-side options for a gluten-free version. Here, I can't say I see that. There's the mini health section, but it doesn't have that many gluten-free things. So unless you're just gonna stick to basic things like rice and beans and meat, then it might be a little bit hard, but that's something to consider. Another thing to note is that when you're eating out, it'll be pretty hard to find an allergen menu from my experience. I've never seen that in a restaurant. They don't really even have calories or anything that American menus have. It's not exactly as dedicated to helping you find food that you're able to eat. And if you ask for ingredients list, I really don't know how available that information would be. There are really not many menus online, and if they do have menus online, it won't have detailed ingredients lists. So it might be kind of hard to handle a dietary restriction here. But then again, I'm sure there are people here who already have them and they're doing just fine. Number 8, are you willing to change your diet based on what's available here? For example, if you get blueberries every single time you go to the grocery store and you have to have your blueberries and you just love them, I hate to break it to you, but I don't think I've ever seen blueberries in my supermarket closest to me. There's frozen ones, yes, but fresh ones, I can't say I've ever seen them. And raspberries, some very specific fruits, don't come out that often. If ever, they might have them in some grocery store in some other fancier place, but I've never seen them. That's something to consider. If you really like to stick to your diet and you're not willing to change that, then I don't know how you'll do if you can't find all those things here. And now kind of moving into the financial side of things, because that is also important. Number 9 has a couple parts. First, are your finances in order? Second, do you work remotely? Are you retired? And have you developed a plan of how you're going to support yourself while you're here? Of course, each person will have their own level of stability that will make them comfortable. If you want to see how much we spend in a month, what's comfortable for us, then check out this video right here. I broke down our monthly costs, and that will give you an idea of what we spend as a 2-person household. But of course, it will vary by lifestyle. Another thing to consider is that you might need a bank account here because a lot of the payments are through direct transfers with the bank accounts here. I can't say I've ever done a transfer between a US bank and a Dominican bank because I really just haven't seen that option. If anything, I've transferred money using an outside service like Western Union or Remitly. But it might be kind of hard if you don't have a bank account here to pay basic things like the rent or the electric bill, because they all really are paid using direct transfer from your Dominican bank account. Number 10, can you live comfortably without online orders? And I'm specifically talking about frequent online orders, especially overnight shipping or same-day shipping or 2-day shipping, because even if you order something on Amazon through a courier service and you order it 2-day shipping or same-day shipping, you're not going to get it the same day because that's shipping it to Miami. And then it takes a couple days to fly over here and then get to the right office and then you go pick it up. So it's a bit of a longer process. And if you're someone who relies on daily orders from Amazon or the local supermarket, I'm not sure how that would work out for you because things are just not the same with the delivery here. There are, of course, services like Uber Eats to get groceries delivered, but they don't always have the grocery store that I want. If I did decide to use that, I have used it in the past, but recently it's just so much easier to just go myself. And number 11, also having to do with shopping, is are you loyal to specific brands? Because you might not be able to find those brands here, and it might be a good idea to, shake it up or at least let loose a little bit, buy a different brand, or be willing to try different ones. Because if you do have a brand that you like to stick to, you might find it here, but it also might be more expensive because it's imported, so depends on what your priority is. Number 12, how important is recycling and sustainability to you? Obviously, we can each make our own efforts to live a more sustainable lifestyle, but I'm going to tell you right now, at least based on my experience, I have not seen any systems in place for recycling. I have heard people collect bottles and they earn money for turning them in. I think that's some sort of form of recycling, but there isn't a recycling truck that comes. It's just a trash truck and everything just goes in the trash. Number 13 is we're moving more into the cultural aspect of it, because obviously there will be culture clashes, is simply, can you accept that the Dominican Republic is a place with its own culture, its own customs, its own traditions, and you can't come in here and just change everything and make it like your own culture. If you cannot accept that a country has its own culture, its own way of doing things, then, I would reconsider moving abroad until you've at least tried to work through that. Number 14, if you've never been here, people drive a little bit more recklessly. So are you okay with that? Are you going to be okay if people are not sticklers for the rules? Because it definitely goes beyond just breaking the speed limit like we often do in the US. It's its own world. People drive very fast. They cut in and out of lanes. They cut each other off. They don't have stoplights where they should have stoplights. If you're planning on driving here, that's something you'll have to get used to. Number 15, how well can you go with the flow? And can you forgo the importance of timeliness? Also, are you patient? These three I sort of put all together because I think they're related. The concept of timeliness is different here. For example, I know this is true for many cultures in the world, but in America, we think being on time is the most respectful thing to do. People who are on time respect your time, and people who are not don't respect you or your time. So it might be a bit of a culture clash to come here and expect people to be on time because they really are not on time. Some things do start on time. I will give credit where credit's due, but timeliness is just not as important. So if that's something that's going to be a big problem, if you're not very patient, you can't wait for people, you can't, wait an hour past the time when something's supposed to start, something to think about. And that sort of makes the whole way things are planned just more go with the flow type things. Events might be planned the day of or very last minute. And, you just gotta go with the flow. You just gotta take a step back from your type A-ness. I know I did, where you want everything to start on time and be in order, because sometimes it's just at a more relaxed pace. And sort of going along with that, number 16 is how often do you find yourself needing to contact customer service? I don't know why some people I find just need customer service more than some other people. Of course, we all need it at some point in our lives. But if you need to contact it often, just know it's not quite the same as in the US. I know someone who works in US customer service and they always try to be very polite. But then when they contact customer service here, they don't really get that same courtesy. Number 17, can you tolerate loudness? Like loud music, loud talking, and especially do you like bachata music? Do you like merengue or dembow? Reggaeton, I don't know, because you might hear a lot of it and it might be very loud and very close to you and you may not be able to hear your own self thinking. So is that something you're going to be okay with? Obviously, if you say no to this question, that's fine. I would probably say no too, but making it work. Number 18, how sensitive are you? If you're trying to build relationships with people here, one thing you might notice is that they pick on each other, and it might be in ways that seem kind of insensitive to us as Americans. We're all about political correctness. But here, I've heard some pretty insensitive comments, and really, it's just, as a culture, I've noticed it. It's not always from the same groups of people, so I'm not going to say, oh, these people that I know, that's just their bad habits. I really have heard it from a lot of different people. Number 19, how do you deal with people cutting in line or people invading your personal space or physical contact? Because especially if you are building relationships here, hugs are always more common than handshakes. And if you're waiting in line, you better be pretty close to the person in front of you or else you're probably going to get cut. You might get cut anyways. Personal space is just different. And this is something I find myself complaining about. I know it's something I just need to accept. But sometimes I'm like, why do people have to be so close to me right now? In the gym or someplace, they get too close and I'm like, I don't understand what happened to the bubble. I feel like my whole elementary school was just remember, everybody has their bubble, their personal space, and trying to learn to respect that. And then here it's just not really a thing. So if you're someone who really needs your personal space, you can live by yourself. You can just deal with it when you go out. And that's what you're gonna have to do. Number 20, I might get me in trouble. Do you have interests in the Dominican Republic? Do you have interests in moving here that go beyond just your dating pool, your options to date? Because yes, there are very beautiful people here, but my reasons for saying this are, first of all, yes, I realize I have my husband here and the relationship worked out, we're fine, but I can't say that every single relationship works out, whether you are dating someone from your hometown or dating someone across the world. So what I would hate to see is someone move here because of a love interest and it not work out, and then they just have a tainted view of the country because of that broken relationship. I would hate to see that happen, first of all, because the whole country isn't just that one person. But if you're not dating anyone and you're looking to move here, and that's your top goal, I would ask you to just question yourself, why haven't I dated anyone in my country? Why do I think I'll be able to find someone here? Am I working on myself to become the kind of person that I would want to date? Things to consider. That's just something I think people should consider if you're moving here, mainly because of a love interest. Learn about the country first. There are lots of videos on YouTube. You can watch my channel. You can watch other channels. There are lots of things to learn about the culture and learn other things to appreciate besides just a possible love interest if you don't have one, or your own if you already do. And that's advice that I maybe could have given myself too. Can't say it would have changed anything. People are probably gonna get mad at me, but I'm just saying, if you think you can just come here, flash some money, flash a green card, and get someone, you probably can, but consider if that's the kind of person that you really want to be with. All right, you know what? I'm done. I don't think I should say any more on this topic. You know, people have good and bad stories, just like anywhere. People have good stories of dating in general and bad stories of dating in general. It's life. And, you know, it doesn't really change being in another country. There are just more things to consider. I hope this was helpful or at least thought-provoking. And if you have decided, yeah, you know, I think these are adjustments I can make to my life, or these are things that I can deal with, these are things that don't matter to me, and these are things that I like about the country, and then great. I would encourage you to check out this video right here where with my husband, I outline 10 different steps to renting an apartment in Santo Domingo. They can possibly be helpful if you are looking to move elsewhere in the country. But thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.